I'm out of the 60th RTT. We went through the academy during the blizzard of '78. And ironically, our track that we ran around every day was plowed before the Mass Pike. And after graduating, I broke in at the State Police Barracks in Foxborough. And after a year at Foxborough, the troop commander, who was Captain Hunt, wanted all the new recruits to go to another barracks. So from there, I went to SP Concord. And one of the benefits of the state police is you get to station or transfer to many different places. I was on the state police for 27 years, and I had 12 different duty assignments. Some of them I've been there a couple of times. So after spending a year at Concord, they were looking for troopers to transfer to D Troop, and I grew up in Dorchester, and Norwell was my patrol area that I wanted to go to, and also patrol were closest to my house, so I transferred to SP Norwell around 1980. And then from there, I was looking to buy a house. I got married. It was funny, I got married a month after graduating from the academy. And housing at that time, the interest rates on a mortgage was 17%. So I moved down to Cape, and I transferred to SP South Yarmouth, D2. And I spent some time there. And from there, I went to the Barnstable County DA's office, CPAC, and I was stationed there for a while. And then I wanted to move back up to the Boston area. So from there, I went to the Diversion Investigating Unit, DIU, which was based out of the Norwell Barracks. And after I spent time there, I actually went to the academy as an instructor at the academy, and I spent 5 years there. When Phil Trapasso was the commandant, I was the assistant commandant of the academy before it moved out to New Braintree. And then from there, we were in the process of going through police consolidation. And Colonel Henderson asked me to go to the Executive Office of Public Safety and be part of one of the implementation teams for the police consolidation, which I did. So I spent some time there, and I was but prior to that, when at the academy, I made the rank of corporal, and then a year or so later, I attained the rank of buck sergeant. And then when I went to EOPS, I was a sergeant there, and I was there under Secretary Rapone. And then when he left, Secretary O'Toole took over, and she asked me to remain there as well. So I stayed there for a while, and I had an inkling to go back on the road. So I went back to as a sergeant to SP Norwell, and I worked out of there for a while. And then I got promoted to lieutenant, and I was transferred to SP Danvers as a duty lieutenant. And I always wanted to be a station commander, and when South Boston opened up, I was stationed as the station commander of South Boston. And that was one of the busiest places in the state also, which was good about it, was patrolling my neighborhood, which I appreciated. It was pretty good. After that, I went back to the Executive Office of Public Safety under Secretary Perloff. So I spent 3 different times at the EOPS under 3 different secretaries. And then what happened when 9/11 happened, and the crazy thing happened during 9/11, we had a governor who was interim governor because the Governor Cellucci went to Canada to become the ambassador. So Lieutenant Governor Swift became the acting governor. The Secretary of Public Safety during 9/11 at that time accepted a job as the Chief of Police of Charlotte, North Carolina, so that was a hole that was emptied. Colonel DeFavo was the colonel. He was going to MIT to be the Chief of Police at MIT, but Governor Swift thought so highly of him that she asked him to remain, and which he did. And also, which was really ironic, was one of the most important departments in the state when a disaster happens, like 9/11, is MEMA, Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency. Well, every MEMA director during 9/11 was at a conference in Arizona. So all the help was needed from New York. So they all flew back. And Massachusetts is part of an organization called NESPAC, New England State Police Administrators Compact. And what that is, it allows troopers from various states to enforce the law in that state, to utilize our resources, our bomb units, our canines, our equipment. In every state, almost every state of the United States is part of a compact. But guess what? New York was not part of a compact. So we could not send equipment or bodies to them to assist until they signed a compact. So it had emergency documentation sent, and New York signed a compact. So that means we could send help, and other states could send help to to New York. But a crazy thing happened on the day it happened. I think every trooper remembers where they were when 9/11 happened. I was on my way to work, and I stopped by my old barracks, SP South Boston, on my way to the State House to pick up some mail. And all the troopers are gathered around the TV, and they saw the first plane hit the Twin Towers. And then I said, wow, you can believe that happened? And then all of a sudden we saw the second plane hit it. So I knew I had to rush into to EOPS because they were a major component in 9/11. So what happened was the Governor Swift wanted to go to the war room at MEMA. So she asked the Attorney General to go there, Colonel of State Police, the Attorney General, the Adjutant General of the National Guard, and EOPS. So the acting secretary was Michael Bolden, and Jimmy Jajuga, who was a former trooper, was about to become the Secretary of Public Safety. So I grabbed one of the troopers at SP State House, Mark Cruiser, to drive us to MEMA. So we're blue lights, we're going through Boston to get on the Pike, and all of a sudden we get T-boned by a stolen car. Well, myself and the trooper driver get out, grab the two guys. All of a sudden another cruiser pulls up, in Michael Bolden and Jimmy Jajuga hop in that car and go to MEMA. So after we cleared up the scene there, I ended up going to MEMA as well. And one of the most important decisions that had to be made that day was the governor and the attorney general had to decide there was a congressional district ballot being held in 2 days between Senator Lynch and Senator Joyce, and they had to decide whether that voting was going to take place, and they decided it did. And Senator Lynch actually became the congressman to take Joe Moakley's seat. So it was kind of a havoc day. We had an interim governor, an interim secretary of public safety, a colonel who was about to leave but stayed, and the MEMA director who was no longer in the state when this all happened. I was assigned as the Deputy Director of Homeland Security. Dick Swenson was the former head of the FBI in Boston, Chicago, New Orleans. The funny thing was when Governor Swift appointed him that position, this guy was a riot. So picture this. We're in the conference room at the State House with all the press around, and Governor Swift introduces Dick Swenson as the new Director of Homeland Security, which was called Commonwealth Security at the time. And so they fired him questions. They said, Dick, Mr. Swenson, what is the first thing you're going to do to protect the Commonwealth? And he folds his hands and he looks up and he goes, I don't have a clue. And it just relieved all the tension. It broke everyone up, and then he went into his process to say what he's going to do. So I stayed there with Dick for a while, and then what happened was our unit reported directly to the governor, and eventually that unit got taken back to Executive Office of Public Safety. And then I made a request to go back what I really enjoy the most, being a station commander. So I was station commander at 3 different places, the State House, South Boston, and I wanted to go back to Milton. And I actually lived in Milton at the time. So, that was my request, and I did. So I retired in 2005 as the station commander at SP Milton with a great bunch of guys and gals. I guess my first memory of the state police is seeing the troopers on the expressway, which they covered, because I grew up in Dorchester, and I always saw them as an elite agency. And when I went to college, there was a major in criminal justice, and I said, as a guy that young, I took all the tests, and I was going through the process with Boston PD, who my grandfather was on Boston, as well as the state police at the same time, and the state police actually called first, so I went with the state police. My brother's on the Boston police, though. He retired as a deputy superintendent. Well, like I said, I always saw the state police as a lead organization, and as a young man, you wonder what do you want to be when you grow up, and I just saw that, and I took all the tests, and I got accepted, and I went through the process, and I'm glad that I did. I went to Suffolk University, and I got a degree in criminal law. I went there on a baseball scholarship, and then when I went on the state police, I ended up getting my master's degree at Anna Maria College. When I was a young trooper, I was stationed at South Yarmouth, and down there they had the Cape Cod Coliseum, which now it's probably a Christmas tree shop, but they used to hold concerts there. On weekends we would get everybody from the greater Boston area coming to the concerts. Well, I covered an accident where a 19-year-old kid was running across Route 6 and he got waffled. Car ran right over him. And he's still alive. They took him to Cape Cod Hospital, but he was in a coma. So I went back there a couple of times to try to talk to him, and no response. So after about 3 days, he's still in a coma. No one knew who he was. So I went back there with my pad and pen, and I said to him, I said, listen, this is who I am. You're involved in an accident. You're going to be okay. You're in the hospital, but we need to find out who you are. So I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold your hand, and I'm going to ask you a question. If you answer in the affirmative, squeeze my hand. So I said, the first question was, are you from Cape Cod? No response. I said, are you from the South Shore? No response. And I said, are you from the greater Boston area? And he squeezed my hand. So I said, okay. I said, I'm going to give you a series of area codes. Tell me if this is any area code that you live in. So I go 781. No. 617. No. No, 617. He said yes, and he squeezed my hand. So this went on for a couple of hours because he was going in and out, but he was still in the coma. So I said, I'm going to go through some numbers. So I know your first 3 numbers are 617. Is that correct? Squeeze my hand. I says, the first number, 1, no response. All the way up to 9, hit 9. So then we went for the second number. After about a half an hour, we got to the second number, was 6. So we got to that, and then went up to the third number, which was 3. And he said, yes. So I looked up, and that was Randolph. So I said, are you from Randolph? And he squeezed my hand again. So I said, we got 4 numbers left, and this took about an hour. So I went through the numbers again, 1 through 10, 1 through 0, and he squeezed my hand. And after about another hour, I got all 4 numbers. So I said, is your telephone number 617-963 XXXX? And all of a sudden, tears started coming down his eyes, and he said, yeah, and he squeezed my hand like, shaking like this. So we called the number, and I said, I identified him. A woman answered the phone. I said, do you have a son about 19 years old? She goes, yes, I haven't seen him in 3 days. I have no idea where he was. I said, well, we have him here. He's at Cape Cod Hospital. He's in a coma, but I think he's going to be okay. So he rushed down. After a couple of weeks, he came out of the coma and survived. So it's one of the things that I remember doing something a little bit different. One of the worst stories I can remember is I was the station commander at SB South Boston. This was around 1999, I believe. So after my shift, I'm working out down in the gym that we had at South Boston, and I had my portable radio there, and I heard that there was a bad accident on 93 and Expressway by Andrew Square, and I heard the trooper Tom Duane calling it in, and I heard him say it's a double fatal, 4 people involved in the accident. And I heard him run the plate, and he ran the plate, and I recognized who owned the car. It was a guy who took my daughter to the prom. So I said, Tom, who's at the scene? And he says, there's 2 girls and 2 guys. 1 guy, 1 girl is dead. So here I am thinking it's my daughter. I says, could you describe the deceased, on a secure line? He says, she has blonde hair and blue eyes. My daughter has blonde hair and blue eyes. So I said, I better get dressed. So I got my uniform on. We lighted out to the scene, and there's a blanket over the young lady and the guy. So I went up to where the girl was, and I put my hand on her head, picked it up, and her brain fell in my hand. And I pulled the sheet back, and it was not her. But then all of a sudden, the phone rang next to her, and it was her dad on the phone. I was not her father, but someone was her father. So I answered the phone. He goes, and he said her name, and he said, I was just talking to you on the phone. What happened? I said, this is who I am. I said, your daughter's been involved in an accident. And he started crying and screaming on the phone. He says, where can I come? I said, we're taking her to Boston Medical Center, so I'll meet you there. So me and Tom Duane went to the medical center there, and we're waiting for him to come, and I went in the chapel and grabbed one of the priests that were there, and he comes in the room and he goes, I need to know what happened. I says, your daughter was involved in a serious accident. What happened was the kid driving the car was in an SUV and was rocking it back and forth and was going on 2 wheels this way, 2 wheels that way, and then it hit the Jersey barrier, and the 2 in the back and 2 in the front seat, the driver and the young lady, at first right into the Jersey barrier, and he fainted right in our arms there. And with the priest, so he goes, I got to see her. I said, well, right now she's at the morgue, and the medical examiner won't let you see her. What they like to do is attend to the body. He says, I got to see her. So we wouldn't let him see her, so we had the medical examiner take a picture of her and send it over to us, and he identified the body that way. So that was probably one of the worst things, because there was a moment in time I thought it could have been my daughter. One of the proudest moments, I was on 2 teams that were given the Governor's Special Service Award. One of them was for our work in 911 and securing the Commonwealth, and the other one was kind of, what happened was in March, I forget what year it was, but I just finished running the Scarborough Road race, and I was the station commander of South Boston, so the race took place in my area, and I invited about 6 troopers back with their families for pizza and sodas. So what happened was about 4:30 in the afternoon after the race, my phone rings, and they says the expressway is on fire. So what happened was a tanker went over, spilled gasoline oil all over the highway, and the whole highway was up in flames, and they had to shut down the highway. So I had to leave my party and go, right to the scene there. So George Chasen showed up with the MEMA van, and we had a command post there, and Department of Transportation was there. And we were able to open up the expressway in 12 hours and repave the entire road there. And because of the work done with the team I was with there, we were given the second Government Special Service Award there. I guess one of the funniest, not the funniest thing, but crazy things that I was involved in when I was the station commander of SP Milton. Milton was a great area. We had a great swimming area at Hodens Pond. We had golf courses. We had a ski mountain they skied on, but we also had a zoo. And we had the Franklin Park Zoo, so I was celebrating my 25th wedding anniversary. I'd just come back from Hawaii about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Brought the luggage in the house, started unpacking, and the phone rings. And the barracks called. They says, I think we need you at the Franklin Park Zoo. I said, what happened? They go, little Joe the gorilla just escaped, and he's running all over Roxbury and Dorchester, and we're trying to subdue him. Now, little Joe was 5'1", over 350 pounds, 10 years old, so he was a rambunctious gorilla. So he's running all around. There's pictures of him. You probably saw on the media of him hanging off the street signs and everything like that and taunting everyone. And so the zoo was under the MDC Zoo, which is now DCR. So Boston Police was there. The guys from my barracks were there, and I went there. Well, they figured they got to tranquilize little Joe because he's going to, if he ever charged. So myself and the troopers and one of our canine guys, I can't remember who it was, but had a dart gun, a dart rifle to tranquilize him. So Joe's about 30 yards away from us, and he stands up and starts pounding his chest. And from what I read, that means he's about to charge. So the rifle with the dart penetrates him. Usually takes one dart to knock him down. Joe's still coming. Second dart, Joe's still coming. It took 5 darts for Joe all of a sudden to just kind of collapse. And then we put him in a cage and brought him back there, and it was a quiet. But the whole incident, how this happened was, Joe was in a cave 20 feet deep. Circled around the cage was wire, which was electrified. So what Joe did, there was a woman in her, a 2-year-old, standing at the top of the cage holding the baby. Little Joe climbs up the cave, grabs the baby out of the woman's arms, gives a forearm to a glass door, shatters the door, and starts running around and takes the baby and throws it in a corner and then escapes through the door. That's how it started running around in the city of Boston. Baby was just minor injuries. It's okay. This actually happened in 2003, so they had the anniversary 2 years ago of 20 years, and they just had a big thing in the newspaper about it. But that was one of the craziest things, how many times you get a call to a zoo that a gorilla charging everybody's escaping. So that was one of the craziest things that I did. Just said my academy took place during the blizzard of 78, like I said, and for the first 4 months of the academy was snow and cold and everything like that. I think we started with 135. I think we graduated 84. And actually, our 50th anniversary is coming up in a couple of years, and I'm hoping we all get together. But periodically, I have lunch with a group of the guys. I had Christmas lunch with a group of the guys a couple of days ago. So I still see them. I still stop in the barracks every once in a while. I bring my grandson into the barracks in Milton. They throw him in the cell and show them the lights, and he gets a big kick out of that. But it was a great experience. And which was kind of cool, is that I ended up going back there as an instructor and as the assistant commandant under Phil Trapasso at the time. John DeFavo was an instructor there who became the colonel. Al Thompson was great. Danny Donovan was terrific. He was kind of like our role model when we were there too. He used to run us to the ground every day and everything like that. So have a lot of good memories with those 3 guys. One of the things I was involved in was in 2004 we had the Democratic National Convention in Boston. And they split us up into different teams. Some of the CERT team was at the State House waiting to be standby to react. And I was on a response squad. We had 3 cruisers, 4 troopers to a cruiser and a canine cruiser to respond within the area there that we were patrolling. So what happened was the anarchists were coming up Beacon Street, so I had my team in front of the State House. Now, we all went through the training on what happens at a riot, and one of the things they warned us that is the anarchists carry water bottles, and they're either filled with acid or urine, and they spray them on you like that. So with my 13 guys, right on Beacon Street in front of the State House, watching the anarchists come up. So they dissipated, they went into Boston Common, didn't cause any problem. And one of the anarchists crossed the street. He had a T-shirt on with the A with the X to it, so we knew he was an anarchist. And he comes over to my 13 guys, and he looks at us and he says, "Hey, you guys want some water?" And so my guys are reacting. He's got acid and he's got his sprayers with it. So they tackle him, throw him to the ground, gave him an unbelievable frisk to make sure he had no weapons on him. And he goes, "Hey, wait a minute." I says, I'm a student. I'm just doing this for the day. I just want to know if you guys were thirsty." So it was kind of funny that, the story that we had during the Democratic National Convention, which ended up being a very peaceful event. Well, believe it or not, when I was a road trooper, when I first graduated in the academy, nobody had a portable radio. So when you stopped the car, you had to put the outside speaker on and have the microphone hanging out the door in case you needed it. So we eventually got portables. When I was a road trooper, I was one of the first to be issued a shotgun, so I carried that in my cruiser. The technology is gone. I wouldn't even know where to start the way it is today compared to what it was, but no air conditioning in the cruisers. Some of them didn't even have AM/FM radio, so the guys and gals used to bring their own radio, put it in the cruiser. No air conditioning, so I had one of those seats with holes in it so you could put it over so to ventilate and stuff like that. So now there's air conditioning, there's radios, there's MDT. It's handheld. It's gone way far since when I was went on the job. Was patrolling the roads. Being a station commander, I enjoyed that being the most because we did a lot of community policing. Another quick story is when I took over as my first station commander was South Boston. I'd been through all the training. The job sent me to the Babson. They sent me to Senior Management Institute for Police. So I was ready to go. So I go in my office, and about 8 o'clock in the morning, I get a call from then, who's now Congressman Lynch, Senator Lynch. And he says to me, "This is Senator Lynch. I want to know why you let the gangs take over Castle Island. I'm coming down your office to meet with you, and I'm bringing the community." And he hangs up. So about 9:30, 25 people come in my office with Congressman Lynch, and they're all screaming, "How could you let this happen?" And I says, "Can I say something?" They said, "Sure." I said, "I've only been the station commander here for 3 hours." So let's put a plan together. So we put community policing into it. We were the first station to have mountain bikes out of our station. Senator Lynch gave us a $175,000 grant just for our station to put extra patrols down Castle Island, and we ended up getting the superintendent's citation award for community policing at that station that year. One of the units, I was in DIU, which was a diversion investigative unit, which was we investigated prescription drugs, doctors, pharmacists. And what we also did was went undercover to a doctor, because when you take the drugs off the street, they break into pharmacies. When they start breaking into pharmacies, they do what we call doctor shopping to get prescription drugs. So we would get highlighted if junkies were getting into doctors. So we would pose as a junkie to try to buy drugs off the doctor. And if we did, we would file charges against them and have their license to practice taken away. Well, we got a report in Scituate. There was this elderly doctor, about 80 years old, who was an osteopath that believed all of your injuries are because of your spine. You're out of alignment. Well, my body was kind of out of alignment anyways from all the running I used to do. I've run 5 Boston marathons, and they sent me down to try to buy drugs off her. So my cover was I was a bar back at a bar. I used to carry heavy cases of beer up, and I threw my back out, and I was wondering if she could help me with some narcotics. Well, she goes, "Okay, lie down on the gurney." So I lie down on the gurney. She's going to put me through an exercise. So she says, "Roll your hips over this way, and then roll your upper torso over that way." And then she puts her hands on my shoulder and puts her whole body weight in my back one. And I was stuck in that position, and I couldn't move. So now she says, "I'm going to maneuver your body, and I'm going to take that crink out of your back." So she takes my shoulder, moves it to the opposite side, takes my hips and moves it to the other side, and jumps on me again and goes, My back creaked, and all of a sudden, I felt great. But she still gave me all the Dilaudid that I wanted, so we had her ticket taken away from her. So that was kind of a funny story. If she ever had a phone call in between the cracks, I would have been stuck there. When I was on the state police, I was mentored by a lot of people. The people I like to highlight is Colonel Henderson was great, Colonel Hillman, Colonel DeFava, who I'm still friends with, Colonel Gilmet, and the three majors that I worked with, Tommy Walsh, Kathy Stefani, Mike Concannon. But the guy who I would say was the biggest mentor to me in my state police career was Lieutenant Colonel Tom Kennedy, and he was terrific. Another guy that was a mentor to me was Phil Trapasso, who was a great guy who I work with at the academy, still friends with today. So I like to highlight that. Well, I still think it's a great career. And let me just say this. There's a lot of retired guys and gals out there. If you were to say to them, if the governor claimed the state of emergency, would you come back? I bet you'd get an overwhelming response that we'd all come back. So it was a great career. I love going to work every day. And after I retired in 2005, I became the chief of police at Curry College in Milton, where I lived in there. And I practiced a lot of the stuff that I learned on the state police as a second career. When you're on the state police, you do meet a lot of high-profile people. I met many of the patriots when I was stationed at Foxborough, and even my career afterwards. Got to meet 4 presidents. What happened was when I was, we had the Democratic debate at UMass Boston against George W. Bush and also Al Gore. So believe it or not, the headquarters of George W. Bush was the Murphy Skating Rink in South Boston. They decorated that as his campaign, for it. And I was in charge of the detail there. So I was in what you call the green room, and I spent a half hour in that green room with George Bush and his wife for a half an hour. And George W. Bush loved police. I can remember every once in a while I'd do a detail at the airport, and I saw him come through when he was the governor of Texas. And whenever he saw a uniform, he would beeline right over to that, shake the hand, and tell him, thank you for your service. So we talked in there, and it was one of the memorable moments. When I was a young trooper, I met Jimmy Carter at the airport when he came here. Bill Clinton did the MIT graduation. I met him there, too. And when I was at South Boston, we had the big South Boston Irish breakfast before the parade. And Joe Biden was a senator from Delaware there, so he came to that. So I got to meet all of them. So I got to meet 4 presidents in my career. And one thing I wanted to mention was when I became the station commander of the State House, the Senate president at one time legislated the state police out of the State House. So we were out. But sometimes it takes an incident for us to come back in, and we had the Oklahoma bombings. So Colonel DeFava asked me to take over the State House to start a new barracks there. And what was unique about it was we wanted to have the right people there. So I brought in Chuck Hanko as a sergeant, who was terrific. And what we had the ability to interview people who wanted to come. So anybody who wanted to come to the State House with a certain mission, set up an interview. So we interviewed it, and believe it or not, at that time we had 30 troopers at the State House, covering all the shifts. We had troopers in the well, motorcycle units there for presidents. We had troopers on every floor of the State House. We had troopers outside greeting people when they come into One Ashburton Place. We had troopers at the garage entrances, and we did that for a period of time. But it was a unique experience where we had 30 troopers who really wanted to be there to protect the image of the state police and get us back in the State House. And I'd like to thank Sergeant Chuck Hanko. He was my right-hand man there when we made that happen. What happened was back in 1980, I was stationed at SP Norwell, and I was breaking in a trooper named Stevie O'Reilly. So he was driving the car, so it was late at night, and we saw a car kind of weaving around the road. So we pulled the car over. It was a pickup truck on Route 3 in Weymouth. And what happened was we approached the car, Stevie from the driver's side, and I always say, make sure you always look behind you. The trooper's biggest fear is getting hit. And I went to the passenger side, told him why he was being stopped, asked for his license and registration, gave it to Stevie. Stevie and I started walking back to the cruiser, and all of a sudden, the operator yelled out a question. So Stevie's walking back to answer his question, and which I should have done, is I walked between the truck and the cruiser, but I always looked behind me, and I saw a car, a drunk driver, barreling down the breakdown lane. Well, I yelled to Stevie, Stevie, jump! And he does a swan dive into the back of the pickup truck. There's nowhere for me to go, so I jumped straight up in the air. He hit my cruiser. I went off the windshield, went off the light bar, and got thrown over the guardrail down in a gully. And if it happened 20 yards further south, there was a 40-foot underpass. I would have landed in there. So I was knocked out cold there. And so they transported me to the hospital. They had to cut my boots off me. And I was okay. I was out of work for about 2 weeks, shoulder injury and head injury, and I had to go through physical therapy to take care of that. But it was one thing I always remembered, which I was trained, is always look behind you when you stop in a car to make sure there's nothing coming out to take you out. So that was the accident I was involved in.